You're staring at your 401k statement. The number went up. Green arrows, percentages, little digital confetti. For a brief moment, you feel responsible, maybe even optimistic. Then you go to the grocery store. Eggs cost more. Meat looks like a luxury item. The cashier says the total, and your brain does that thing where it disconnects for half a second. Later that day, you see the price of a new truck, or rent, or insurance, or literally anything that exists in the physical world. And suddenly, the math doesn't work anymore. Your investments are up, but your life feels more expensive. That's because you're playing a game where the rules are being rewritten at 3 a.m. without telling the players. You didn't get worse at money. Money got worse at being money. Let's talk about the number everyone pretends is normal now. The US government is sitting on roughly $37 trillion in debt. That's not a typo. That's not a future problem. That's right now. Break it down, and it's about $280,000 per household. And here's the part no politician, no economist on TV, and definitely no retirement planner will say directly. That money is never getting paid back. Not by higher taxes, not by growth, not by some magical productivity boom. The only plan on the table is to quietly destroy the value of the currency, to inflate the debt away, which turns your savings into something very specific, a melting ice cube. Most people still think money is stable, a measuring stick, a scoreboard, proof that your effort mattered. But that measuring stick is shrinking. When the government can print trillions of dollars in weeks, and when the interest on the national debt becomes one of the biggest line items in the federal budget, there are no good options left, only sneaky ones. This isn't a recession. This isn't a cycle. This is a structural change in the rules of money. In the old game, you saved cash. In the new game, cash is a guaranteed loss. If real inflation is running at 7 or 8% and your bank pays you 1, you are paying a poverty tax for the privilege of staying liquid. Every second you sit still, your purchasing power leaks out. Quietly, politely, relentlessly. This is where the story gets uncomfortable. Because while the government is busy turning the dollar into a melting ice cube, something else quietly stepped into the power vacuum. Not a country, not a central bank, a company. One you probably interact with every single day. Microsoft. While Washington argues about debt ceilings and budgets, Microsoft built something far more efficient. A private global tax system. Not enforced by law, enforced by necessity. If you run a modern business, you don't choose to use Excel. You don't debate Word. You don't shop around for Azure. You comply, because productivity now runs on their rails. And every time a company renews an Office 365 subscription, they're not buying software, they're paying a tax. This is what turns Microsoft from a tech company into a digital landlord. Think about landlords for a second. They don't ask tenants if rent hikes are convenient. They don't care if wages kept up. They don't negotiate with inflation. They raise prices because they can. Microsoft does the same thing, globally. And here's the key difference between Microsoft and the government. When inflation hits, the government has to lie about it. Microsoft doesn't. They just raise prices. No votes, no debates, no press conference. They have pricing power, which means they can increase their tax rate faster than the government can print money. That's not innovation, that's leverage. This is the part that breaks people's brains. The wealthy aren't smarter, they aren't psychic, and they definitely aren't exciting. They're boring. They don't chase meme stocks. They don't gamble on narratives. They don't sit in cash waiting for the perfect moment. They own assets that raise prices automatically. When inflation hits, their income adjusts. When costs rise, they pass them on. That's the game. So when you hold US dollars, you're holding a digital IOU from a government $37 trillion in the hole. But when you own a piece of big tech, you're owning part of a global taxation engine. You're not betting on software, you're betting on inevitability. Here's where the math gets cruel. If the dollar loses 10% of its value, your cash buys 10% less food. No adjustment, no protection, no apology. But Microsoft doesn't lose 10%. They just change the price because their software is sticky. Sticky means switching is painful. Sticky means retraining staff. Sticky means broken workflows. Sticky means downtime, errors, chaos. So companies don't leave. They absorb the increase. They pass it on. They keep paying. Inflation doesn't hurt Microsoft. Inflation flows through Microsoft, from consumers to businesses to subscriptions to shareholders. That's the machine. You're not investing in software, you're buying a claim on a system that extracts money from the global economy and funnels it upward, relentlessly, automatically, quarter after quarter. This is why everything feels broken. There are now two economies, Main Street and Wall Street. Main Street is drowning. Paychecks lag. Rent jumps. Groceries creep higher every month. People feel like they're falling behind even when they're doing everything right. Meanwhile, Wall Street keeps hitting all-time highs. Why? Because Wall Street owns the companies that are raising the prices. Microsoft, Apple, Google, Amazon, the Magnificent Seven. They are not victims of inflation. They are beneficiaries of it. This is the disconnect nobody wants to explain honestly. Central banks are quietly hoarding gold, not because they love shiny rocks, because they don't trust the dollar anymore. But private capital? Private capital found something better. Big tech. These companies have become what I call the shadow reserve. They don't need permission to exist. They don't rely on one country. They don't collapse if one currency fails. If the dollar breaks, businesses still need email, still need spreadsheets, still need cloud servers, and they'll keep paying the Microsoft tax in whatever currency comes next. That's the power. Not ideology, not patriotism, infrastructure. So what do? You don't need to outsmart the market. You don't need insider info. You don't need to predict a crash. That mistake has kept people poor since 2010. You just need to accept one uncomfortable truth. The old rules are dead. The lazy investor doesn't fight the system. They use it. They automate. They dollar cost average. They move their melting ice cube cash into boring index funds that are heavily weighted towards these digital tax collectors. Funds like VTI. Not because it's exciting, because it works. By doing this, you change roles. You stop paying the inflation tax and you start collecting it. Here's your homework. Audit your portfolio. Look at your cash. If you've got £50,000 sitting in a savings account, you are bleeding purchasing power every year. You are providing exit liquidity for a government debt problem you didn't create. Stop cosplaying as a safe saver. The politicians are positioned, the bankers are positioned, and the people who write the tax code are positioned. They own the assets, they benefit from inflation, and they are counting on you not understanding the Microsoft tax until the transfer is complete. The measuring stick is broken, the lease on the dollar is up, and the digital landlords are already collecting rent. You can keep holding cash and pretending this is temporary, or you can position yourself for the world that actually exists. Don't give them the satisfaction of being the last one holding the bag. This isn't conspiracy. This is math.